Hi there, my name is Gabe Genway, and I'm going to show you how to make your own steampunk props. What I have on the table before you is bottles, toy guns, and even a Nerf Super Soaker squirt gun. The techniques that I've used is acrylics, rub and buff, some small leatherworking, and some impact foam for the grenade. Now, these are all beginner techniques with the exception of the gun and behind. If you're wondering where I purchased these guns, they were from Walmart about 2 years ago. They were sitting at $1 each at the time, and I bought around 40 of them to go for sale in my shop. But I did not paint them up as the stock type that just requires rub and buff and just a primer. I made several different types of designs. Now the ones on the right over here are various ones that I purchased from other stores, cap guns, squirt guns, etc. Usually the best time to actually go buy a toy gun is at the end of the summer, or if you want to go get a gun a little sooner, you can go to a garage sale or a thrift store or even your flea market. Now, some of the tools that you're going to need to get started when it comes to painting these guns is an X-Acto knife, sandpaper. You can also use a sanding sponge, or at Hobby Lobby or Michael's they have a modeler's small sandpaper. It's roughly about 2 inches by 3 inches, has rounded edges. Or you could be like me and get a Dremel. You can use a sanding wheel or a sanding drum. And once you're done with all that, you need to wipe it down with some denatured alcohol. Now, guns sometimes have oils on them from the plastics, and that can greatly interfere with you trying to paint your gun. Nerf guns are notorious, especially the yellow types of Nerfs, because paint, like priming them, seems to just almost drip off. Now, with going back to sanding, what I like to do with any of my guns, I do not like to see any of the writing like made in China or splash toys or whatever. I like to sand it all off. I'm going to show you briefly. As you can see on this gun, which has not been painted or sanded or anything, you can still see the logo, and my gun right next to it, I sanded it off. You can't see the logos or anything. They even have something on here that says Jaru. That's all gone too on this one as well. And one thing I will stress out right now is make sure before you do any sanding, before you do anything, that you acquire some eye protection and some breathing protection. The best thing to use is actual goggles, not steampunk goggles, but safety goggles, because when you sand, stuff just flies all over the place. So you don't want to end up going to the emergency room or your optometrist to get a little piece of plastic that got lodged into your eyeball and ended up costing you $200 just to paint a little toy gun. It's kind of embarrassing. So now that I'm back, I've done sanded, so I'm just gonna wipe it off with the sanding that I did with this one. I put a few cut marks into it, some battle damage as I call it, and I've already applied the denatured alcohol and I'm rubbing it down. And this not only cleans off the gun for me, it also wipes away a lot of the dust from the sanding process. So it's a 2-in-1 thing. That's why I suggest that after you're done sanding, wipe it down with the denatured alcohol. Now some people, they like to leave the orange tips on there because it's a matter of the cops thinking that you might have a real gun or not. To me, I just leave it up to the discretion of the person who's going to use the gun. I personally do not like to have the orange tips on there. They just take away from the feel and kind of shatter the illusion. I only use these things at conventions and at social gatherings. I do not run around with these things in the public. If I do have them in the public, or if the convention wants me to, I will put an orange tip on there. So now it's all done and wiped down, I can get started painting it. Before I go any further, I just wanted to show you some of the close-ups of the battle damage. What I did was, since I'm using a Dremel, I used the cutting barrel and I actually cut deep little wedges into it. Now this is going to look really great after I get the primer done and start using the rub and buff. What the rub and buff will do is, since you use your finger or a tool to rub it on there, it's not going to go into the cracks and cut marks that I make, and so it's going to show that. I've seen some people actually use water droplets and use regular silver spray paint, but I like using rub and buff. It's non-toxic. You just put it on your finger and go. But sometimes it's a little helpful to wear some vinyl or the some sort of light glove when you apply it. Just to me, I get a better feel when I use my fingers. Now this is my spray painting rack. I made it out of PVC pipe, and I used a combination between wire coat hangers and some copper wiring that I had lying around to actually hang the guns or the props that I'm painting. The PVC pipe can be bought from like Lowe's or Home Depot, and that cost me at most around $10 or $15. Yeah, I just used a normal little hacksaw to actually cut the pipes into the size I need and made a stand. This helps out a lot because you actually have 360 all the way around to paint your gun or your prop. It really is extremely helpful. I used to actually paint on paper plates, and I end up realizing I'm wasting more paint on that because you paint one side and sometimes you overcoat it, and once you do the other side, you lightly coat it with that one, and next thing you know, you have a heavy paint on one side and light paint on the other. It doesn't really go well. Alright, so now I've got my Krylon Fusion. I'm going to go ahead and start painting it. Just want to use light sprays, flow with the pattern. Test it out a little bit. Make sure you shake the can up a little bit. That's really helpful. Looks good. That's another good thing about having this PVC rack. I can just test my spray paints out on it. So. Low humidity also is really helpful when it comes to painting the guns. If you have high humidity, like if you live where the Cairo lives and you live over here in Louisiana, you can have a ton of high humidity. You want to be below 85% humidity when you start painting. The guns usually take about, usually in Krylon Fusion, it takes about 15 minutes to dry, even though it says for you to wait an hour. I've come across it drying a lot quicker in lower humidity. And also temperature is a big thing. But all spray paint cans, they all list on here for the Krylon Fusion. It says use between 50 degrees and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and humidity below 85%. Follow the instructions on the can and you'll be good to go. Alright, I just put on the second coat. I only put 2 coats on. One is a little a starter coat, and the second one I'll put a little heavier on. But as you can see, that's the there's a one that's unpainted and a one that's painted right next to it. I'm just showing you so you can get an idea what it looked like. Another thing is, and I'm going to do this as soon as I get done talking, is don't leave the guns out in direct sun to dry. It makes the paint hot and sticky, and actually takes a little longer because since the plastic's hot, it's going to take a little longer for the thing to completely dry off. I know it doesn't make much sense, but maybe it's just down here in Louisiana with all the humidity. It's like that. Right now I'm dealing with around 65% humidity.